The late sun cast a merciless glow over Cottonwood Springs, turning the dusty street into a stage no one wanted to watch. A sharp cry split the still air as Deanna Daniels staggered backward, blood streaking her cheek. It was 1878, a time when justice in the Arizona Territory often came from the barrel of a gun. Quarrels between men were expected, but what unfolded before the townsfolk that afternoon was something different. A husband beating his wife in plain sight. Frank Daniels, swaying with drink and rage, loomed over her, his fist trembling as he readied another strike. "Make a fool of me again, woman, and I'll—" His words slurred into a growl. Deanna, only 23, pressed a trembling hand to her face, the metallic taste of blood on her tongue. 3 years of marriage had stripped her of every hopeful dream she once had. Her dress, once neat, now hung in tatters of dust and crismo, and her chestnut hair had fallen from its pins. "Please, Frank," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the uneasy silence of onlookers who would not interfere. That was Cottonwood Springs' unspoken law. What happened between man and wife belonged to no one else. Frank grabbed her arm, squeezing until she winced. "Get up, I'm not finished with you." "I'm not." "Let her go." The command cut through the murmurs like the crack of a whip. Deanna blinked against the glare to see a tall figure step forward, his outline framed by the dying light. A wide-brimmed black hat shaded his face, but the glint of his eyes, hard and blue as polished turquoise, was unmistakable. A stranger, a cowboy. "This isn't your business," Frank snarled, dragging Deanna closer. The newcomer's hand brushed the grip of his revolver as his boots crunched steadily across the dirt. When a man raises his hand against a woman in the street, it becomes everyone's business. His voice was low, steady, edged with steel. "Let her go." Frank let out a jagged laugh, the sound twisting Deanna's stomach. "Or what? She's my wife. I'll deal with her how I please." "Not while I'm breathing." The words hung like a death sentence. The crowd, which had grown to a ring of silent faces, shifted uneasily. The piano from the saloon tinkled faintly in the background, the only sound besides the sheriff's old sign creaking in the wind. Deanna's pulse thundered in her chest. No one had ever dared oppose Frank, not for her sake. Hope and fear tangled inside her like barbed wire. "Who the hell are you?" Frank spat, shoving Deanna aside. "Dalton Shaw," the cowboy answered, his tone calm but unyielding. He let his hand fall from his gun and crossed his arms, a deliberate show of control. "Just rode in, looking for a day's work and a quiet drink. Didn't figure I'd find a coward beating a lady instead." Frank's face purpled. "Coward? I'll put you in the ground." His hand twitched toward the revolver on his hip, but Dalton moved faster. One sharp strike knocked the weapon from Frank's grasp, and a second blow to his gut left him doubled over, gasping in the dust. "That's enough." Sheriff Miller's voice rang out as he shouldered through the onlookers, hand hovering near his own holster. "What in blazes is going on here?" "He jumped me," Frank wheezed, pointing at Dalton, rage and humiliation twisting his features. The sheriff's gaze shifted between the men before landing on Deanna. Her face, bruised and bloodied, spoke louder than any words. His expression softened. "Mrs. Daniels, you all right?" For a heartbeat, she hesitated, weighed down by years of silence. But then her eyes met Dalton's, and courage sparked where despair once lived. Her voice, steadier than she thought possible, broke through. "My husband hit me, Sheriff. This man stopped him." A hush fell heavier than dust. Sheriff Miller exhaled slowly. "Frank, you've had too much whiskey again. You'll sleep it off at Mabel's boarding house tonight. I won't have you raising hell here." "She's my wife. You've got no right." "I've got every right." The sheriff cut him off coldly. "Go, or you'll spend the night in my jail. Your choice." Frank glared at Deanna with venom enough to chill her to the bone. "This isn't over," he hissed before stumbling into the shadows of the street. The crowd melted away as quickly as it had gathered, leaving only Sheriff Miller, Dalton, and Deanna standing in the settling dust. "Don't know you, stranger," the sheriff said cautiously. "Just passing through," Dalton replied. "Looking for honest work. Johnson's Ranch might be hiring," the sheriff offered, then turned to Deanna. "Mrs. Daniels, should I fetch Doc Evans?" She touched her swollen cheek. "No, Sheriff, thank you." As Miller strode away, Deanna found herself alone with Dalton Shaw. Up close, she noticed the fine lines at the corners of his eyes, the gray threaded in his dark hair, the quiet strength he carried. He was no boy, maybe 35, maybe older. But there was life in him, life she hadn't felt in years. "Thank you," she whispered, voice breaking. "But you shouldn't have interfered, Frank. He won't forget this." Dalton studied her face, not with pity, but with an unspoken respect. "Some things a man can't ride past, ma'am. Do you have someplace safe to go?" "My sister's house, just down the street." "I'll see you there," Dalton said simply. And together they walked through the watchful silence of Cottonwood Springs. Whispers about Frank Daniels had been floating through Cottonwood Springs long before his fists ever bruised Deanna's face. Folks said his first wife hadn't simply died of fever as he claimed. No one could prove otherwise, but the shadows of doubt clung to him. Added to that were his gambling debts, owed to dangerous men who didn't forgive easily. That night, in Deborah's modest home, the four of them, Deanna, her sister, Sheriff Miller, and Dalton, huddled around the table, laying out a plan that could change everything. It was bold, risky, maybe even reckless. But for the first time in years, Deanna felt a spark of hope flicker inside her chest. "You don't have to do this," Deborah whispered later as they readied for bed. "I can't keep running, Deborah," Deanna replied, staring through the window at the star-sprinkled desert sky. "Tomorrow, I face him. No more hiding." Morning came clear and bright, as if the heavens themselves had swept away every cloud for her. Deanna dressed carefully in the blue calico gown she had sewn years ago, back when marriage still seemed a promise instead of a prison. Deborah pinned her hair, smoothing every strand with tender hands. Together, they walked to the sheriff's office, where Dalton and Miller waited grim-faced. "He's been in the saloon since morning," the sheriff reported. "Drinking hard, talking loud about the both of you." Deanna drew a steadying breath. "Then let's end this." The four of them crossed the street, boots crunching over the dirt. Inside the Double Eagle Saloon, the air was thick with smoke, whiskey, and anticipation. Miners, ranch hands, and drifters crowded the tables. Frank sat in the corner, a half-empty bottle beside him, cards spread before a trio of rough-looking men. His sneer cut across the room as soon as he spotted Deanna. "Well, look who found her courage," he jeered. "Come crawling back to beg?" Deanna didn't flinch. She walked straight to his table, every gaze in the saloon burning into her back. "No, Frank, I came to bargain." He laughed, a harsh sound that silenced even the piano in the corner. "Bargain? You've got nothing worth trading. I want a divorce." Her voice rang out, clear, deliberate. The room froze. Frank's smirk faltered. "You've lost your senses. There won't be a divorce. You'll come home now, before I—" "Enough." Sheriff Miller cut in, stepping closer. "You'll hear her out." Frank's eyes darted from Dalton to Miller to Deborah, his lip curling. "An ambush, then. You think this changes anything? This gives you a choice," Deanna said firmly. She set a small leather pouch on the table. Coins clinked inside, catching the light. $300. Every cent I've hidden away these past 3 years. Yours, if you agree to free me in front of witnesses." Frank's hand twitched toward the pouch, but Deanna snatched it back before his fingers touched it. "Not until you say the words. And why would I sell off my wife for a few scraps of silver?" His tone dripped contempt, but his gaze lingered greedily on the pouch. Dalton stepped forward, his voice like a blade. "Because the sheriff here's been asking questions about your first wife, and because word's already spreading that the Willix brothers are coming to collect on your gambling debts. You'll need that money if you want to live long enough to drink another bottle." Color drained from Frank's face. The Willix brothers were known for collecting debts in blood. "This is blackmail," he hissed. "No," Deanna said calmly. "It's survival, for both of us. Take the money, take your pride, and start over somewhere far from here. Or refuse, and watch your life collapse by sundown." The saloon was dead silent, every man holding his breath. Frank's jaw worked as his pride battled his fear. At last, his shoulders sagged. "Fine," he spat. Take your damned freedom. You were never worth the trouble. Say it, Deanna pressed, her voice steady. With venom burning in his eyes, Frank stood, his chair screeching against the floor. I, Frank Daniels, release Deanna Daniels from marriage. She's no longer my wife. The room seemed to exhale all at once. Put it in writing, Sheriff Miller demanded, slapping a paper onto the table. Sign your name and renounce all claim. Frank scrawled his signature with a shaking hand, then snatched the money pouch. One more thing, Deanna said quietly. You leave Cottonwood Springs today. You never come back. You can't. The noon stage leaves soon, the sheriff interrupted flatly. You'll be on it, or you'll answer to the Willix brothers. Frank's glare scorched her as he shoved past, nearly knocking Deanna off balance. The saloon doors slammed behind him. A weight lifted. For the first time in years, Deanna felt air fill her lungs without the choke of fear. She turned, and Dalton was there, a faint smile tugging at his lips. You did it. Her voice trembled with both relief and awe. We did it. In the weeks that followed, life began to reshape itself. Frank was gone, sent out of town with his reputation in tatters. Rumors trailed after him, but they couldn't undo what had happened in full view of Cottonwood Springs. The town, to Deanna's surprise, largely sided with her. Where once there had been pitying whispers, there was now respect. She rented a small room above the milliner's shop with her savings and took work assisting Mrs. Whitaker, the town seamstress. Her skill with a needle soon made her invaluable, and for the first time, she held coins in her hand that were hers alone. Dalton kept to his word, working at Johnson's ranch but riding into town most Sundays. He always found an excuse to stop by, sometimes with wildflowers, sometimes with a carved trinket, always with a quiet kindness that steadied her heart. You seem lighter, Deborah remarked one Sunday over tea. Happier. I feel it, Deanna admitted, touching her cheek, now healed. And a certain cowboy might have something to do with that, Deborah teased. Deanna blushed. He's been a friend, nothing more. But you'd like it to be, Deborah pressed with a knowing smile. Deanna sighed, her heart tugged in two directions. It's complicated, I'm not free yet, and after Frank, trusting a man again feels impossible. Dalton isn't Frank, Deborah said softly. Not all men are monsters. The truth of it lingered long after Deborah left. That evening, a knock at her door revealed Dalton, taller than her little rented room could contain, hat in hand, his usually steady manner tinged with nerves. I leave for Prescott at dawn, he said. Mrs. Johnson asked me to escort her. I'll be gone a week, maybe 2. But before I go, he reached into his pocket and drew out a small silver locket, delicate and shining. Inside lay a pressed desert primrose. They bloom only after the harshest storms. Survive where nothing else does. Reminded me of you. Deanna's throat tightened as he fastened the chain around her neck with surprisingly gentle hands. When I return, Dalton said softly, I'd like to talk about the future, my future, and maybe one we could share. Her breath caught. Fear and hope tangled in her chest, but she managed a trembling smile. I'd like that too. When he left, she touched the locket at her throat, feeling warmth bloom inside her where despair once lived. 2 weeks crawled by with no word. Rumor placed Frank in Tucson, drifting south toward Mexico. The thought that he was truly gone should have brought nothing but relief. Yet Deanna found herself restless. For years, she had lived only to endure. Now, with freedom in reach, she struggled to imagine what happiness could look like. Mrs. Whitaker had noticed. Sometimes we forget how to live after surviving too long in a storm, the older woman said kindly. But before Deanna could learn what sunshine truly felt like, the storm returned. On a thunderous afternoon, Deborah burst through the seamstress shop door, her face pale as parchment. Deanna, come quick. It's Dalton. He's hurt. The world tilted. Hurt? Where is he? At Doc Evans's office. Deanna's heart nearly stopped. Without another word, she dropped her sewing and ran. The storm rolled over Cottonwood Springs with thunder that shook the windows, but Deanna barely noticed the rain lashing at her face as she sprinted through the muddy streets. Her shawl clung to her shoulders, heavy with water, but her mind could only cling to one thought. Dalton might not survive the night. The idea of losing him before their lives had even begun to entwine was unbearable. She burst into the doctor's small office, dripping with rain, her breath coming fast. Timothy, the young assistant, looked up in alarm. "Mrs. Daniels, you're soaked." "Where is he?" She cut him off, her voice trembling. "In the back. But the doctor—" Deanna didn't wait for permission. She pushed past him, heart pounding, until she saw Dalton lying pale and broken on the examination table. His chest rose unevenly, his body swathed in blood-stained bandages. Dr. Evans turned, irritation in his eyes. "This is irregular, Mrs. Daniels. Let her stay," Dalton rasped, his gaze locking on hers. "Please." Deanna moved to his side, tears blurring her vision as she took his hand. "What happened?" she whispered. "Ambush," Dalton winced. 5 men stopped us. They knew my name, said they carried a message from Frank Daniels. Her stomach dropped. So Frank wasn't finished after all. Even from a distance, he had reached into her life again, striking where she was most vulnerable. Dalton tried to give a crooked smile, but it turned into a grimace. "Don't worry. You should see the other men." Dr. Evans muttered, 2 bullets, cracked ribs, and a concussion. It's a miracle he's still alive." Deanna's guilt surged. "This is my fault." Dalton's grip tightened. "No, this is Frank's doing. Don't carry his sins." When the doctor insisted Dalton needed quiet, Deanna shook her head. "I'm staying." Her voice, firm and unshakable, left no room for argument. That night, with the storm whispering against the window, she kept vigil at his side. Dalton drifted in and out of consciousness, but when she asked why he had stepped into her life that day, his answer came halting, heavy with old scars. "My father was like Frank. My mother, no one helped her. I swore I'd never look away again." His eyes softened on her. "But when I got to know you, it stopped being about her. I saw you." Tears filled her eyes as she pressed a trembling kiss to his forehead. "Rest now. Tomorrow will come." By morning, Dalton's fever had broken. Dr. Evans declared he would live, though weeks of healing lay ahead. Deanna made her decision without hesitation. "You'll recover in my home. Deborah will stay with us, so propriety will be kept. I won't let you fend for yourself while danger still lingers." Dalton hesitated, then yielded to her resolve. The following days blurred into a rhythm of recovery. Dalton, stubborn as ever, tried to do too much, while Deanna scolded and laughed more freely than she had in years. Their closeness, even with Deborah as a buffer, began to feel like something deeper than mere friendship. By the time Dalton could walk the streets again, Cottonwood Springs had already grown used to the sight of him at her side. Sheriff Miller's approving nods silenced any gossip that lingered. At last, the circuit judge arrived. Deanna stood before him in the town hall, answering his questions with a quiet strength that silenced every doubt. Testimonies from the sheriff, Mrs. Johnson, and even the reluctant doctor painted the truth plainly. When Judge Parker declared her marriage dissolved, Deanna felt the word free settle in her bones. Outside, the townsfolk offered congratulations, but it was Dalton's steady smile that anchored her. That night, in the quiet of her small room, he set aside his carefully rehearsed speech, knelt before her, and spoke simply. "I love you, Deanna Daniels. Whether you want marriage or not, I'll stand by you for as long as you'll have me." Tears spilled freely as she whispered back, "I love you too, and I want a life with you, as your wife, if you'll have me." Dalton kissed her hands reverently, then laid out his conditions. Her independence would remain hers, their marriage would be a partnership, and she must always tell him if he ever caused her fear. Her laughter through tears sealed the vow, and their first kiss carried the weight of a promise neither would ever break. 2 weeks later, the whole town gathered in the little church to see them wed. Deanna, radiant in a dress she had sewn with her own hands, spoke her vows with a clear voice. The gold band Dalton slipped onto her finger wasn't just a ring, it was the start of a life chosen freely. 5 years later, Deanna watched from the porch of their small ranch as Dalton taught their son to tend a gentle mare. while little Sarah chased butterflies nearby. Her hand rested on the curve of her belly, another child soon to join their growing family. Life had not been easy. Storms, droughts, rustlers, but every challenge had been faced side by side. She thought of Frank only when the past brushed her memory, and even then, the shadow no longer held power. He was gone, his cruelty buried with him, while her own life had blossomed like the desert primrose Dalton once compared her to. Dalton came up the steps, their daughter riding his shoulders, and leaned to kiss her softly. She smiled against his lips. "Do you ever regret it, intervening that day?" His eyes warmed. "Not for a single second. Best trouble I ever asked for." Deanna laughed, her heart full. As the Arizona sunset bathed their land in fire and gold, she remembered the words that had first bound their souls together. "Not while I'm breathing." A vow once spoken in defiance had become the foundation of a love she had never dreamed possible. A love that meant freedom, family, and forever.